All right. Hi, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome to the webinar, Generative AI Market Analysis. My name is Anna Bui, and I am a member of the Programming Committee at CFA Society, Winnipeg. Collaborative with us on this event are CFA Society Edmonton and CFA Society Vancouver. Today's discussion focuses on generative AI and particularly on how to potentially drive big changes. Mandeep Singh will be joining us from the Bloomberg Intelligence to discuss trending research, analytics, and data tools to help you make informed investment decisions. Before turning things over to Mandeep, I'd like to take this opportunity to share a brief background on him. Mandeep Singh, a chartered financial analyst, is also a senior equity analyst and global head of technology research at Bloomberg Intelligence. His coverage includes infrastructure software and internet companies. He's also an established thought leader for secular trends in tech space, including generative AI, cloud, machine learning, and cybersecurity. He's also the host of the podcast series called Tech Disruptors, which features conversations with thought leaders and management teams on disruptive trend. Just before we get started, just a reminder that we will have some time at the end for questions, and feel free to send them in as you think of them via the chat box. And Valerie Gibbs from the CFA Society Edmonton will help us on the Q&A part. Okay, so without further ado, I will pass things over to Mandeep.
Great, thank you, Anna, and it's a pleasure to be here. Let me share my screen, and I'll try to keep my presentation to around 30 to 35 minutes, and I'm hoping that I can take as many questions as I can at the end. So, look, when it comes to generative AI, there are so many dimensions that you can choose to, talk about the topic. And so a little bit of background about BI. So we are a research group within the Bloomberg. We are about 475 plus professionals looking at different sectors, across different domains from credit, equity to antitrust. So, and we are spread out geographically, as you can see, across Americas, EMEA, and Asia. We have coverage of over 2,000 companies, and I'm responsible for leading the tech sector. So the way I put together this presentation is, I'll start off from the 1,000-feet view in terms of what this technology is about, what's so differentiated, and get into specific products, companies that are leading the trend, and we've obviously put some numbers around what kind of adoption and monetization we are seeing. So in terms of just the background of how these models work, because the term generative AI gets thrown around quite a bit, when it comes to companies that are investing in this space. And if there's one thing I feel everyone needs to realize is there is the training of models, and then there is the deployment of models, which is called inferencing. And I'll get into the details of both. But what's different with generative AI is the training universe of these models has just expanded considerably. So when people were doing machine learning, it was a very, I would say, focused approach in terms of picking a data set, identifying, what are the parameters that can help you predict a certain output, and then training your algorithm on that sort of data set. And, the most notable example was Netflix recommending you movies, or Amazon recommending you products when you go to the website. And so the way the algorithm, the machine learning algorithm worked was they basically had characteristics based on age, based on preferences, based on specific criteria. The algorithm was able to learn based on user preferences, and then when you satisfied that criteria, you were shown those sort of recommendations. But that was a very, I would say, specialized case of AI. What generative AI has done is basically the models are trained on entire internet data that's out there. And you may ask, not everything can be used for training an algorithm. That is true, but there are a lot of large publicly available data sets like Common Crawl, like Stack Overflow on the coding side, which are huge when it comes to the size of the data set. And the way generative AI works is, you can basically summarize all the information that you are feeding to the model in the form of tokens. And again, I'll get to all those terms as we go along. But I think it's important to understand how these models are trained and what's so special about these models. So use of public internet data, which is quite vast. And what it does is it makes the model intelligent about broad topics. So anything that's common knowledge on Wikipedia, guess what? The large language model has that sort of information. And then when you have to customize the responses, there's a technique called retrieval augmented generation, which is basically attaching your own database or your own documentation. And then the model can be more specific in terms of the responses. And this constant human evaluation and feedback, because one of the shortcomings of generative AI was the models hallucinate a lot. So the way companies have been looking to basically solve that problem is through human evaluation and feedback. And so there's a technique called reinforcement learning and human feedback, RLHF, which you may have come across. That is how a model stops hallucinating, and it uses human feedback to improve its response. And then finally, once the model gets to a point where it can do a sequence of tasks, that's when we are talking about automating workflows. So with that backdrop, there are companies, notably OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta, and another one, Mistral. They have trained their own large language model from scratch. So they pretty much started off from nothing, used all the internet data, used their own proprietary data, generated lots of tokens, and they ended up creating what is called a frontier foundational model. And that is the basis for pretty much all of generative AI deployments. Now, the difference between OpenAI's model and Google's model versus a Meta's model is OpenAI and Google are proprietary LLMs. Meta and Mistral are open source LLMs, which means they have disclosed their tokens, they have disclosed the weights of these tokens. And so anybody who wants to build a generative AI application can use an open source model as a starting point to customize the LLMs, as opposed to making an API call to a Google LLM, which is proprietary. So that's where you pay per API call. Very different business model. And the way these LLMs work is whether it's text-based prompting or image prompting or some other type of prompts, it's a use of prompts. And what I mean by prompts is you can send prompts, of 100,000 plus words, as opposed to doing a Google search with, a few characters or a few words. So the size of the prompts has just grown exponentially. as I said, retrieval augmented generation is the way companies are customizing these LLMs. So it's a very important technique, and also fine-tuning a model. If you're using an open source model as a starting point, you can fine-tune a model using specific approaches. So in terms of features, the big change is co-pilots. I mean, what we are talking about is companies pretty much, rolling out, as notably Microsoft, rolling out a co-pilot for everything, whether it's a coding co-pilot, a Office 365 co-pilot, a security co-pilot. What co-pilot essentially does is it makes it easy for you to use that, long prompt to generate an intelligent response for anything that you're doing inside Word or Excel. So even a PDF, I think you can do very interesting searches as opposed to just keyword searches. So that UI is evolving, and that's a productivity enhancer at some level. Chatbots, I mean, customer service chatbots have been around for a very long time. What we are seeing now with generative AI is these these chatbots are way more intelligent when it comes to answering a query or engaging with someone. So the power of chatbots is growing, and not just text-based chatbots. It could be voice-based, it could be multimodal, and they're becoming quite intelligent in their interactions. Language translation, that's again, something that companies have been trying to solve for years. Real-time language translation, well, that's something that comes natively to generative AI models. So I think huge when it comes to the type of deployments we are seeing. Summarizing anything, I mean, we all deal with, too much information in the financial world as well as other domains, and generative AI is a great way to summarize any large amounts of text that you have. And then image video generation based on prompts. I mean, imagine this was done exclusively by people who were proficient in using a graphical interface, whether it's Adobe software or some other type of specific graphical interface. Now you can generate image and video using text prompts or just even speaking to software, and that is huge. That just democratizes image video creation in a big way. So what this does is it has the potential to drive large changes. I mean, we're talking about a lot more conversational user interfaces, and it's not just for customer service, for everything. If you can have a conversation, why type it out, or why whether it's your personal assistant or any other type of product that you're using, it just, the point and click interfaces will change considerably. As I already mentioned, content creation is going to get a big boost. Like, this is a tool that every content creator would want to use, just because it makes them productive in what they're doing. Personalization will be a lot more deeper, because previously the personalization was done on certain attributes: your age, your gender, your background. Well, now it could be thousands. We're talking about personalization at a level where everything can be fed into the model, and it can understand the context, and it can personalize at that level. And what that does is, I think every job will change. I'm not calling out for big displacement of jobs anytime soon, but the way people do their jobs will change, because this will become part of the workflow. At least in certain domains, it's going to happen a lot more faster than some of the other domains. And the biggest change will be at the contact center level. BPO or customer service as we know it, it's a huge industry. It's very services driven. And we are already seeing applications where this is augmenting, the way people run their customer service centers and whatnot. So huge use case when it comes to customer service side. And this is something that every sector, every company deploys at some level. And so quite a big impact when it comes to the customer service use case. So what kind of products are we seeing out there? Well, generative AI products, obviously the big tech companies have been front and center with their Gen AI deployments. Microsoft, as I mentioned, Copilots, and then on the infrastructure side, they have created that infrastructure on the cloud for people to deploy generative AI. And I think they have integrated it in their search. Obviously, habits take a while to change, so not everything kind of changes right away, but you can see an LLM-based search is quite effective for certain type of searches than the traditional Google search. And that's where Google themselves have incorporated AI views or search generative experience on their search page. They've launched copilots, they've launched their own chatbots. It's called Gemini now. I think they've realized that they definitely need to offer that variation in their product, given the competitive threat from LLM-based searches. Same thing with Amazon. Everyone in the large tech community has launched Copilot, and I think what we are seeing with Amazon is the same, that they have launched a Copilot. They have launched their infrastructure cloud product to host these workloads. And I think with Meta, you're seeing them deploy generative AI across their stack. So they've already changed how they run their ad systems. It's based on a generative AI model. Their content creation tools incorporate Gen AI, and they have open sourced their models. So somewhat of a different strategy than the other hyperscalers. So let me dig a little bit into the technology. What I mean by generating tokens is an LLM tokenization is just a way to feed data as is without any tagging. And what ends up happening is a GPU, when you try to tokenize something, will take the text input, generate a token, which is a vector, and then the vector will have its own embedding in the form of, just kind of latent space where you kind of generate token embeddings for entire text that you're feeding. And we are talking about petabytes of data. So then that's why the training process is so compute intensive. I mean, we all know about GPU shortages. Well, the reason why you need so much GPU compute is because you are generating tokens for all the large amounts. I mean, we are talking about internet scale data that's being fed into a GPU cluster, and the output of that is a set of tokens with their position. And that's what is used for comparing your prompt. So when you enter a prompt, it converts that to a vector and compares to this existing model with parameters and weights and embeddings. And that's how it knows how to generate the next word. What is the query that you're asking? And the model is smart enough to figure out responses to any questions because it's got that scale in its parameters and weights. I mean, it's a very technical domain. So I'm not even scratching the surface when it comes to tokenization. But I wanted to leave that slide just to help people understand what I meant by tokens. So what we are seeing right now is Copilot adoption really take off. I mean, on the developer side, pretty much every developer is using a Copilot, and it's helping them do their work more efficiently. Same thing with uh, using it in your PDF or your documents, long documents, whether it's for summaries or for doing very descriptive searches. A Copilot is just a fabulous way to engage with a long, 1,000-page PDF, for example. Image generation, as I mentioned, you can build marketing campaigns just based on prompt. And in this slide, you can see, they are creating an Instagram ad for a description. And this was all done just using a prompt. So quite powerful when you think about it. And what Meta has done is they have launched chatbots with personalities. So it's customized for that specific domain, and it's just fine-tuned. That this is where the fine-tuning comes into play. So you can see how fine-tuning is used in a big way. And as I mentioned, conversational interfaces. I mean, we will have collaboration at a level not seen before, because you pretty much can talk to the LLM, and multiple people can do that simultaneously, and it can generate, results in real time. So very powerful in terms of conversational interface changes. I already mentioned about Google changing the search page, and a lot of you may have noticed that. Then you can ask a follow-up. So you can see how some of the most used products are already changing in a big way. And when people question the ROI of generative AI or where it's being deployed, I mean, the examples are there right in front of you in terms of the most used apps incorporating Gen AI and their features. But the field is not without its challenges, and as I said, LLMs are not enterprise fit out of the box. So you do find companies that are deploying it. They are dealing with hallucinations, inaccuracies. It's limited in what it can do, and I think there are certain biases, so which needs to be fixed. And there are different ways that companies are customizing these LLMs for their use, because they lack proprietary knowledge. So as I said, hallucinations. So they are connecting these LLMs to enterprise data sources, and that is what is driving the usage in an enterprise context. Because you don't want to, if you're an enterprise, you don't want to give away your data, and that's where I think it's quite important to fine-tune the LLMs according to your use case. Another example, you can see, if you ask a foundational model a question on what are the top bugs that have been filed this week, it will have no information about that. But if you connect it to something, to your enterprise documentation using a technique called RAG, which I mentioned before, then it's able to pull up that information, and it's something that is becoming a standard right now across enterprise usage. This is another slide that explains just that RAG concept, and you can do a lot of customization in terms of ranking and how you can connect it to a vector database, etc. So in the end, when it comes to enterprise deployment, everything depends on how much data you have for customization. And this is just a slide of what kind of data lakes companies are building, and then generative AI is at the heart of it all in terms of connecting customer service, finance, marketing, operations. And you can find, that's something that's clearly impacting enterprise-wide deployment of generative AI. So with that context, we at Bloomberg Intelligence have sized this market. And as you can see, it's a $200 billion market for 2024, about 4% of overall tech spend. And we are expecting it to grow to 1.6 trillion by 2032. So the breakdown of that, and it was a very bottoms-up approach that we use, is training. So that's how you will find everything that I discussed so far, the terms that I use, they all sort of fit in this pie chart. Training is the most compute intensive. It's the biggest segment, $652 billion segment. And then inferencing, which is deploying, a large language model that's already trained across different applications, whether it's sitting on your smartphone or running on the cloud. So that's the next big area, 479 billion by 2032. And then ads, I mean, that's going to have a huge impact. IT services, BPO, and there are a lot of other smaller use cases. And look, when it comes to training and inferencing, what we are seeing is when you look at NVIDIA, being a $200 billion business over the course of the next 2 years, and it's already a $100 billion run rate company, it just goes to show that compute as we know it is changing in a big way because of generative AI. The way companies are monetizing this huge upfront capex investment. So the key players in this space are OpenAI, Alphabet, Microsoft, Meta, and others. Companies that have their own foundational model, that are deploying it on the cloud. These are the different attributes, what is the size of their model, how many parameters they have across different versions, whether it's open source or not, multimodal. And, you can see what kind of revenue they're able to generate right now. So even though they're investing a lot more, like Microsoft's CapEx budget is around 60 billion for this year and expected to grow another 30-40% next year. Same thing with Alphabet. So these companies are investing a lot more, but they're already generating revenue as well. I mean, Microsoft Copilot is a $3 to $5 billion business. GitHub Copilot, another billion plus. Azure AI services, probably more than 3 billion now, given how everything is getting deployed on cloud. And same thing for Alphabet and OpenAI. OpenAI is a $4 billion run rate company now. So you can see the monetization is there, not to that level of investment that they are making, but the growth rate are just astronomical. And that's where, the hope is that these companies can scale fairly quickly, even when it comes to monetization. Just one more slide on the subscription sales, because a ChatGPT subscription business is a $2 billion run rate business. Claude, another model that has a subscription offering, and Perplexity as well. Like, these are companies that are pure play generative AI. And they are deploying their products in a way where customers are paying for them. And then finally, I mentioned about compute. The GPU pricing is just off the charts because of the insatiable demand. That's been the case even in the first half 24, and signs are the market will remain supply constrained for the foreseeable future, next 6 to 12 months. It's hard to predict beyond that, but as I mentioned, this market is 1.6 trillion plus over the next 8 to 9 years. So even if we have a digestion, I mean, the market still has very secular high growth. So the timeline could vary depending on how the deployments and the monetization happens. But everyone sees the ROI, everyone sees the use case, and the computing paradigm has changed because of that. And to conclude, look, the focus for generative AI was on picks and shovels. And what I mean by that is, companies that are providing the infrastructure, whether it's on the equipment side with ASML and that group, or NVIDIA with the chips. But now I think we are at a point where we are seeing real big applications of Gen AI use cases. And the age of assistants, co-pilots, agents, I mean, all these will proliferate. It's there now, and it will only grow because even if it's a 10% increase in productivity, I think everyone realizes these models will get better. Everyone realizes that there are efficiencies that will gain naturally over time with the use of technology, and the prices for chips will come down. If everyone feels very strongly about investing in this for the long term, then the capacity for making these chips will grow. The power demands, I think, will be solved by the market. So it's just about having the visibility that this is a permanent change, which I think it is. So you will see more assistants, co-pilots, agents. And look, for the first 12 months, everyone thought large language models were a black box. But now people realize that they follow rules and parameters, and you can fine tune. And if a model is hallucinating, there is a fix for it. So I think that realization is coming in. And what the AI tools will do is there will be more creators, there will be more developers, because as I said, it's making it really easy to abstract the complexities of being a creator or a developer, and then just using your intellectual power to do things using a prompt without having to learn each and every tool deeply. And what it will do is, in some cases, whether it's software development or applications or apps, you will have way more faster iterations than you had before, where everything had to be done manually using a graphical interface or a point-or-click interface. So there are a lot more levels of efficiency just by virtue of making it easy for people to implement the changes. And I mean, in any team setting, there are people who have varying degrees of knowledge, skill set, and so LLM will give you that consistency when it comes to doing things in a predictable fashion. And I think that's huge in terms of doing these faster iterations. So that's all I had in my prepared remarks. I know I'm halfway through the session, and I did want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'll open it up here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mandeep. That was very interesting. And there is a few questions that have come in, but feel free to all of you here on the call, because we've got quite a large audience at 94 participants, but there's a Q&A function as well as the chat. So you can use either or. So I'll go here to a first question that came in. And the question says, Apple has a white paper where they rank other AI models, and it looks like Llama particularly stands out on most metrics. Do you have any views on which AI models are better in which area? And Llama is an open source model. Does that mean that it doesn't necessarily create a strategic advantage for Meta? Well, it's a long one.
Yeah. So you're right in terms of observing that every model has their strength in terms of, the type of task they're good at. I think a Google model will always have the advantage of, connecting the model to their search, the real-time nature of search. So remember, these models are trained at a point in time. So GPT, for example, has knowledge only up until 2023. It doesn't have any knowledge of what has happened in the world after 2023. Whereas if you go to a Google model, it obviously connects to the search, even though the core Gemini model has a point in time aspect. But because Google is able to connect to their real-time search, it always has that advantage. Now with Meta, I guess the real interesting strategy that they have adopted is one, they have a lot of social media data that they can use to anchor their models' responses. So they have things that they can answer that a Google or an OpenAI model can't answer when it comes to asking questions that are more social media type or group or community specific. But all these models are good with in terms of working as a coding copilot, for example. So you can use any of these models and they can be deployed as a coding copilot to varying degrees. Now, what OpenAI did recently is they released the chain of thought version, or the O1 model. How that's different is the way these models, at least most of them so far, work is you enter a prompt and the prompt is fed to the pre-trained model, and the pre-trained model will make a comparisons to the text that is being passed word by, and it will generate a response word by word. The chain of thought takes time to think, in the sense that it will have an initial iteration, then it will look at the response, it will assess the quality of the response, and then maybe have another iteration before it shows the final response to the user. So that's another way to implement an LLM. And I think open sourcing it does help you build an ecosystem, but then at the same time, I don't know how Meta will monetize it, because in the case of OpenAI, they get paid every API call. Meta has to license it. And I think right now, Meta is really looking to build an ecosystem, because we know open source is quite prevalent when it comes to Linux. So they want to be that Linux when it comes to the LLM world.
Wow, that's awesome. There's a question here. Well, there's actually quite a few questions that have come in now. So we've got a question from Frank here in Edmonton. Hi, Frank. The question is how to become more informed, a more informed user of AI technology. So for someone that's just getting started, what would you say is the best resources to get educated on AI and AI technology?
Wow. I think start using an LLM. I mean, what I've found is just using ChatGPT or Gemini or, these subscription, they have a freemium version as well, although they cap you pretty quickly when it comes to the free queries. But even something like a Notebook LM from Google, it's quite powerful in terms of showing what the product can do around merging different types of documents, giving you the ability to summarize quickly, ask intelligent questions. And that's what a copilot is meant to do. Now we are used to doing things in a certain way when it comes to the tools we use in our day-to-day life. But once you start playing around with the tools, you find, okay, there is efficiency to be gained. It's just you have to make that change. And I think there is a plenty of news flow, blogs that describe what these companies are doing. These companies have their own blogs. So I would say a combination of all these things will help you stay informed.
Excellent. Other one, this question is from Jaydeep. Perhaps you know him. He says, well, thank you so much for a great conversation here. But the question is, with generative AI and LLM models, how can this impact future earnings call of companies and its incorporation in data-driven investing?
I mean, look, generative AI is just giving you ways for you to process information much faster. So how it gets used, I think we'll find very creative uses of using generative AI, whether it's for investing purposes or other types of use cases that I highlighted. We'll find out, but I think suffice to say that there will be more use of these tools and use at a scale where it will be part of every application that we use. And I think it's hard to really imagine how quickly that change will happen. But I've no doubt that, as people start to use it, they will find very novel use cases, even for investing.
Excellent. Okay, another question came in from Paul. Could you comment on computing at the edge? What does that mean? Are the new AI type laptops better and faster?
So basically, when you have a trained model, most of these companies currently give you the ability to do inferencing on their cloud. So when you use a ChatGPT or a Gemini, you're basically going to the website or the app that is running on the cloud and giving you a response. Now, I talked about, use of AI and personalization. So when it comes to personalization and using Gen AI as a voice assistant, what you don't want is, everything to be done on the cloud, because there are certain things that are sensitive to, you. And so you want that LLM to run natively on your smartphone or your PC, and that's inferencing at the edge. Now, obviously, we know power is a big limiting factor right now for deploying Gen AI. So there's only only a certain size model that you can run on your smartphone because of the power constraints. And that's where these companies have launched a smaller version of their model, whether it's AI PCs that can run the model or your AI smartphones. I think we are still quite early, because when you distill a large language model into a small model, like a 500 billion parameter model to a 7 billion parameter model, it loses its accuracy, in terms of the type of queries that it can answer or the responses that it can give. So that's where it can only do so much around use cases. And I think companies are trying to figure out what is the best chip for a small model. And I would say we're still waiting for better iterations of that.
Excellent. One question, and I'm curious, I'm definitely curious to hear what the answer is, but is it worth paying the monthly subscription fee for the more advanced chatbot?
I mean, it all comes down to the usage. So I know my usage has grown quite a bit, and that wasn't in the first month, or so over time, as I find more things that I can do, I definitely feel having a subscription is worthwhile. But The other thing that's tough to fathom without actually using it is the multimodal nature. So, I mean, we're so used to doing things using a text-based prompt because that's how Google page is. But now even Google has got Google Lenses, so you can upload a lot of images. These chatbots take it to the next level. You can ask any question in any type of form, whether it's a text prompt, image, video. You can ask any question of it, and it just gives you the ability to do things in a way where I think the traditional Google search was quite limiting. So this is like expanding use cases, and once you start doing that, you don't want to hit a cap, because these products, the freemium version is capped very soon. So I find it's worthwhile to have that subscription offering.
Okay, great. Question here from Jeff. Can you comment on the market for LLM training software specifically? Do you see any change to preference to use OpenAI's Triton or PyTorch? Sorry, that's totally not my area of expertise. 2.0 for training LLM compared to NVIDIA's CUDA.
Yeah, I'm not in the weeds in terms of how this is actually done. So I'm sorry, I'm quite limited in my response to this question, but
Okay.
suffice to say that these companies are trying to build a stack when it comes to this training or inferencing, and think of training as something that you have to keep repeating. As I said, once you train a model, it's dated as of that age. So for your model to keep improving, it needs to be trained again. And so when it comes to training, given the compute requirements and the long process and the big cluster, we're talking about doing even training more efficiently as you repeat it. And that's why, having a software layer, whether it's from NVIDIA or OpenAI, they're just trying to build their moat around how easily you can train the algorithm the next time and the next time and so on.
Okay, so a question here from Christina. What strategic approach would you use for an enterprise if you need a tuned model to make a base model proficient in our industry body of knowledge? Ooh. But also then connect to specific data volumes of confidential data for specific staff to work with? Yeah, so I think here maybe it's also getting at the privacy issue.
Yeah, no, that's where I had a few slides around retrieval augmented generation and how enterprises are deploying it. So basically, whether it's OpenAI or any other model, what you want is that confidential data to stay within your database, not being used for an API call to OpenAI or some other LLM. And these companies have developed a solution so that you can deploy the LLM without the LLM using any data for training their own model. And that's where the retrieval augmented generation using a vector database, these are some of the approaches that companies are using to ensure that the data stays confidential and nothing goes out of your environment. So absolutely, I think if you look into RAG and just vector database, that those are the approaches that are being used.
Excellent. A question here from Shakib. Where do you see the most significant need for improvement in materials and hardware in the technology itself, or safety and ethical frameworks?
Yes, alignment is a big issue for all these models in the sense that they've got big teams where the whole purpose of that is to make sure that the biases are not there in the LLM, because think of it this way, the way LLMs are generating a response to a question, like it's so different from the traditional Google, 10 links, where you pick and choose, what you can relate to most. Whereas in this case, you're getting a specific answer. Now, you may not agree with that answer, but the model is generating an answer based on its training, and some would say, biases, and so that's where the alignment comes into play. And that's where the human feedback element comes into play, because you want to make sure that, Wikipedia type of source always ranks higher than some other source on the internet, because you want it to be as true and as objective as possible, as opposed to, as I said, there are definitely occurrences of biases when it comes to these LLM responses. So alignment teams are what's taking care of these sort of things within the LLMs.
Okay. Another question here. From a market standpoint, how would an LLM differentiate narratives and optics from facts and truth? In short, how would a garbage in, garbage out be avoided and reduced? And I think, like, you spoke about data hallucination too, at some point. Like, I mean, how can you, I guess that's like, how can we make sure that the information that's produced from our query is accurate and fact-based?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where every model is taking a different approach. I think for open source models, you can see how they are going about it a little bit more transparently, whereas for the proprietary models, it's just the use of the product, and that's where I think Google in their early stages had quite a bit of challenge with the way they were generating images. They've clearly solved for that in the next iteration. And there's no substitute to involving humans when it comes to feedback from these models. And that's why these models get better over time, because as you involve the use of these models across a wide range of subjects, you find out where the shortcomings are and what is it that you need to do algorithmically versus from a data standpoint to make these models better. And already they have become quite better over the last 12 months. I mean, I think the progress has been astounding when you think about what these models can do compared to where they were 12 months back.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a great question here. What do you see as major hurdles affecting the AI adoption? Is it going to be power generation? You talked about that. Is it going to be regulation? Is there anything else that we're not thinking about that might slow down the adoption of AI?
I mean, absolutely. I think power generation is clearly a constraint at this point of time. Everyone feels the next model should be bigger, and they want to train it, here, preferably here, as opposed to outside because of the geopolitical concerns. And then when it comes to improving the model, there is more talk about using synthetic data, because they've exhausted the data on the internet, or at least the data that's available on the internet to train a model. So then the next phase is, can you use data that's generated by these models to train the models? And that's where, OpenAI's approach around just chain of thought reasoning. Like, if you think about it, the responses from that kind of model can be used to further train the model. If the model can think in 2-3 steps, then you can train it using that data to improve the model using further iteration. So a lot of cool techniques that are way above, where I'm involved and how I'm looking at these companies.
And now a question from Kangwa. What are the skills demanded of finance professionals as AI adoption increases? So how are finance professional going to have to adapt? What other skills do we need to build to be able to move ahead with this AI adoption?
I mean, start using these tools. I think suffice to say that every job will be affected in different ways. And think of, what is it that you can leverage here? So I think at least in my world, I'm dealing with, thousands of filings. And there's so much information that is out there. If I can find a way to use it in a more efficient way, whether it's summarizing, ranking, or doing intelligent searches, that's huge. I mean, if you think about it, that makes me more efficient in the work that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's just scratching the surface. I think there are more interesting use cases, and I'm sure there will be different types of products that will be built natively on LLMs, sort of like wrappers. But we're just learning every day.
Yeah, I'd say like working at a bank, definitely the privacy issue is a major concern. And so I think for some folks that are working in the for financial institutions, adopting AI is going to probably be slow coming as the bank wants to make sure that we're protecting information. I know it's been integrated in many of the search function because I mean it's got incredible capabilities, right? We'll see here. I think there's maybe we'll do just one more question, then we'll have to close the call. It was very insightful. But so, last question from Daniel. In terms of copyright issues and plagiarism, what's the general consensus around using results from queries in reports?
Yeah, I think it is a huge issue, and a lot of the companies that own the IP, whether it's on the imaging side, video side, or even the publishers, they're starting to be more protective about their intellectual property. Remember, the LLMs were built on training, the initial version around open internet data. So that open internet data, I think, is shrinking now because everyone wants to protect their intellectual property and be paid for it. And you've already seen OpenAI and Google pay for Reddit data, for example. Reddit data is used for training both the LLMs. And I think similarly, every source that owns IP wants to get paid if the models are being trained on it. And copyrights, I think, will be an issue. I mean, so far, these companies have done a good job of making sure that the model doesn't spit out something that's exact replica of a content it found on the web, because these models are not databases. So there is that intelligence element in how these models respond. But I can see a lot of lawsuits, over time. So we'll see.
Well, we'll keep an eye open for those. But so from here, I'm going to turn it over to James Liu from CFA Society Vancouver to close the call. James, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you, Mandeep, for your presentation and valuable insights. It has been a pleasure hosting you. On behalf of the contributing societies, CFA Society Winnipeg will be placing a donation towards your charity of choice, the CASA Aid Foundation, with gratitude. We'll be following up tomorrow with a brief survey. Please take a few minutes to let us know how we did today and what other presentation topics would be relevant and useful to you. Thank you, Bloomberg Intelligence and CFA Societies Winnipeg and Edmonton for your collaboration. Our societies look forward to bring you more presentations in person and online. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, guys.